Now that the Rivers of America is completely walled off to guests, suggesting a new phase in the demo is about to begin, I've been doing yet another deep dive of Imagineering's concept art for Cars Land Piston Peak, and I've picked up on some things I've never noticed before. As you probably saw in the title of this video, Disney appears to be drawing on two existing theme park lands to create Magic Kingdom's Piston Peak. Is this an instance of Disney playing it too safe or being repetitive? We're going to discuss that. Also, I think a certain mystery project that Disney has been keeping under wraps could have a connection to Magic Kingdom's Frontierland, but even if it doesn't, I'm going to make the case for why it should, and how it could really help this land, and how guests are feeling about Piston Peak. But let me warn you now, it has to do with even more IP in the park. So as always, you're watching Probably a Disney, and today we're peeling back the layers on just what Imagineering may be bringing from the West Coast to the East, as well as how Imagineering could tweak their plans for Cars Land to match with another woodland project already in the works. But first, we're going to start with how Disney World is borrowing from Disneyland to create Magic Kingdom's Pixar-focused mini-land. As a refresher, and for those who don't already know, Magic Kingdom's Frontierland is in the midst of a multi-year transformation that so far has included turning Splash Mountain into Tiana's Bayou Adventure, Country Bear Jamboree into Country Bear Musical Jamboree, the Frontierland Shootin' Arcade into a DVC Lounge, a refurb and new storyline for Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which is opening in 2026, and now the closure of the Rivers of America, the Liberty Bell Riverboat, and Tom Sawyer Island to make way for Piston Peak. Disney first announced this reimagined section of Frontierland and its two Cars attractions at D23 in 2024, but it wasn't until the next day that Disney dropped the bombshell that this new Cars area would be replacing part of the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island. And as part of the shocking announcement, Disney unveiled this concept art. But fast forward to June of this year, Disney unveiled another piece of concept art and with a noticeably different vision and aesthetic, which is national parks and park-architecture. Not only is there now water elements and what looks like a stream or remnant of the Rivers of America, but the land isn't quite as committed now to the look of the on-screen Piston Peak from 2014's Planes, Fire, and Rescue, as there are now 3 peaks instead of 1, and the color palette of what I assume to be Plane, Fire, and Rescue's Grand Fuselage, a play on Wyoming's Old Faithful Inn, which inspired Disney's Wilderness Lodge, has been altered to match that new national park's parkitecture design. And yes, for those of you asking, I am now totally concerned about a possible refurb of Wilderness Lodge and a Cars overlay for the rooms, but that is a topic/rant for another time. Furthermore, the land's original racing motif and that racing sports network focus appears to be gone. Now, it's no sequel that Piston Peak was also a semi-sequel land to Radiator Springs from Disney California Adventure. How could it not? And while the look of the two lands are different, both are anchored by indoor-outdoor racing attractions. They're populated by Cars characters and references, and they're surrounded by tons of artwork. But in changing the land to this national park style, Piston Peak is now borrowing from another land at Disney California Adventure, and that is Grizzly Peak. Grizzly Peak is also themed after the national parks and is all about parkitecture, and water is a major component of this land as well, courtesy of Grizzly River Run. So to me, it certainly seems like Disney traded out the kind of Alpine meets Plains 2 meets racing theme for DCA's Grizzly Peak. a land and concept they have executed before. In fact, I'm also beginning to wonder if what we see here in the Piston Peak artwork isn't just the second family attraction, but maybe a playground space, like a small version of Grizzly Peak's Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, but with some nods to Tom Sawyer Island. Now, I get why Disney is combining Radiator Springs with Grizzly Peak for this new project. Disney knows they can do this and do it well. It solves the problem of having no water in Frontierland. But my question is whether this is too safe and maybe too repetitive, especially since this needs to be a project that warrants replacing portions of the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island. Will it be able to wow guests, or will it be too much of the same, especially for those of us who've experienced both Disneyland and Walt Disney World? Another question or concern I have has to do with recognition. Much of Radiator Springs' appeal upon its opening and through today is its immersiveness and how Imagineering recreated an on-screen world in the real world. But can this somewhat loosely inspired location set in the Cars universe have the same draw as an iconic location from the Cars franchise? If not, there's a chance that Piston Peak may already be coming in at a deficit. However, as we Disney diehards are always saying, IP isn't what makes a land or attraction a hit, it is execution, it's detail and quality, which is what I hope Disney lets Imagineering really go for. I just hope that Disney doesn't go all in on the brand and not enough on the world they're trying to create. Then there is the main attraction, the rally car race. We still know little about this attraction apart from the concept art and these two videos. Neither did much to move the needle on guest anticipation, and the mention of each car being designed to have its own personality and reaction to the terrain, which could lead to rewritability, really flew under the radar. Because at the moment, this looks, or at least feels, like an attraction that has been done before, much like the land itself, like too much of the same. But there is still hope that Disney could really surprise us with this one and maybe package this attraction in a way that will build guest hype and could elevate Piston Peak as a project overall. And if so, then borrowing from two Disney California Adventure themed lands won't even matter. But before we dive into the next topic, which is how Disney could fix or elevate Piston Peak with the project that's being kept under lock and key, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think of Disney essentially combining two DCA lands for Piston Peak? Does this improve your opinion of the project, or is it too safe and repetitive? I'm really curious to hear how Disney fans feel about this. Now, let's dig into Disney's secret project and how it could help Piston Peak and Frontierland. If you've been in the Magic Kingdom area lately, and especially Disney's Wilderness Lodge or Fort Wilderness Resort and Campground, you've surely noticed construction for Disney's Lakeshore Lodge, Walt Disney World's next DVC resort, which is being built on the site of the former River Country Water Park. Set to open in 2027, if not earlier by how fast construction is moving, Lakeshore Lodge is a mystery because Disney has said so little about it since it resumed construction last year. Most likely, this is to give ample time for Polynesian Towers DVC sales, which only just opened in late 2024. But the resort's already complicated history and its possible ties to Frontierland, hang on, we'll get there, have only added to its mysteriousness. I'll explain. Disney first announced a DVC resort on this site in 2018, but back then it was called Reflections, a Disney Lakeside Lodge. We even got some concept art showing more of that modern airport IKEA meets tech campus resort style, with Disney explaining Reflections would be inspired by the wonders of nature and the artistry of Disney. There were also plans for a lakeside restaurant themed after The Princess and the Frog, which I believe explains why Pecos Bills is still not Tiana's place at Magic Kingdom, as well as A-frame cabins and treehouse villas, a lazy river for the pool complex, and more. Disney understandably hit pause on Reflections construction during the pandemic, and it seemed like a dead project until about a year ago, where Disney suddenly revealed a new name, which is Disney's Lakeshore Lodge, not Lakeside Lodge. Whether the concept art from 2018 is still what we're getting, if Tiana's restaurant is still in the way, and if any changes have been made, we don't know. Disney has been totally silent about this, even though walls for the resort are now up, and they're even putting in windows as we speak. I have said this before, but I have long wondered if Disney is going to connect this resort with Frontierland, given that they are both under construction and about the outdoors and the natural world, and Lakeshore Lodge is technically going to be a Magic Kingdom resort. But now I'm not only speculating that they might, I'm now thinking that they should, because, and I know this will be shocking to some of you, I think more IP is the answer when it comes to Piston Peak and Magic Kingdom's Frontierland. One of the biggest issues Disney fans have with Piston Peak, apart from replacing the rivers in Tom Sawyer Island, is that it's Cars. Cars is a modern day story, while Frontierland has always been about history in the 19th century, and the world of Cars is where living things are mechanical, and that just does not mesh with what Magic Kingdom's Frontierland is. But since this is happening, and if Lakeshore Lodge is still committed to its theming, Frontierland and this mountainous woodland aesthetic Piston Peak is creating could have much broader appeal and soften the edge of having a Cars land in Frontierland by incorporating other outdoorsy Disney IPs, like those represented at Lakeshore. In that old resort concept art, Disney characters were everywhere. Bambi, Thumper, and Flower were at the entrance, Pocahontas is in the lobby, we see references and theming to Brother Bear and Fox and the Hound, and then of course there's that Princess and the Frog restaurant. So that IP is here as well. And since Princess and the Frog is already in Frontierland, why not bring references, details, Easter eggs, and even character meets to the areas surrounding Piston Peak and along this new Frontierland river, tucked in by the waterfalls and beyond? Yes, Piston Peak is an extension of the Cars universe, so putting Pocahontas next to Lightning McQueen would not work. That is not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting having those other characters along the fringes and within these new wooded areas. It could work, as this land and the Cars attraction is creating a new backdrop and new spaces for the greater Frontierland. Also, yes, I know Pocahontas is set in Virginia, Brother Bear is set in Alaska, but if New Orleans is allowed to be next to the Rocky Mountains and the Southwest in Frontierland, I think we're past the rules of geography at this point. So overall, if IP and merchandise sales have to be the driving focus behind Piston Peak and Magic Kingdom's Frontierland, Disney needs to go all in and not just rely on Cars. Threading other Disney IPs, many of which are already underrepresented in the parks, will broaden Frontierland's base, create a stronger emotional draw for guests, which this land is really going to need in the wake of nostalgia, and would allow Piston Peak, or at least the area around Piston Peak, to be less of a Cars land and more of a conduit for other Disney Frontier stories and characters to live in the Magic Kingdom. But again, I am curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Lakeshore Lodge's theming and characters could help Frontierland? Do you agree in this case that more IP may actually be the answer, as blasphemous as that sounds? And what are your thoughts on Lakeshore Lodge? I know I've talked with some of you in the comments about how it's already impacting the campground and taking away from Fort Wilderness. But even so, do certain aspects of this resort intrigue you, and will you check it out once it's complete? But that is all I have for today. Of course, I'll be keeping my ear to the ground for any news or reports about Piston Peak, Lakeshore Lodge, and what Imagineering has in store. But if you enjoyed today's video, if Disney park news, analysis, or speculation is your thing, I would so appreciate if you would hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It truly makes my day and helps me to keep churning out content for you, which I love. But regardless, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical day.